Hello, Paula. Thank you so much for joining the GCC Voices interview series that I run. And this is a series that I do with GBS and GCC leaders around the world. I'm so pleased to have you on my show because I know that you have been an inspirational leader for Latin America and other parts of the world, and you have led GBS functions globally. So again, very delighted to have you. And I just want to invite you to kind of say a few words about your background so that our viewers can have a good sense of your leadership and the context that you bring.
Well, thank you, Anisu. Thank you for this inspiring invitation. And I'm very pleased to share with you some of my experience and some of the learnings that I've had for this relevant industry in Colombia and in Latin America. So first of all, about me, I've been a global business service executive for uh, relevant years. I have a very strong finance background since I started my career, and I brought all this finance background into relevant experience to build, transform, and scale multi-country shared service operations models across the Americas. So I've basically served the Americas from Colombia by scaling some of our shared service models here. Through the career, I've had the opportunity to lead setting up regional GBS and finance organizations from the very start point, from a startup stage to strategic enterprise partners that integrate operational excellence, the governance models, the discipline that is needed to be part of these models, digital enablement, and people-centered leadership, which is absolutely key to drive the trust that is needed to set up these models.
Fantastic. I think that's a very diverse range of experience, and I think that's really what our viewers would really value. So I wanted to start with this question about, when you led your GBS, it grew from a planned 200 to 300 to about 600 through capability. And then, rather than planned migration, so you were really thinking a lot about developing capability in the center. So what was the actual moment that you realized that this model was shifting from being just a roadmap on the timeline to being demand driven?
Okay, well, it wasn't a single meeting or a specific moment that I can identify. I think it was more a pattern that became clear along the evolution of the model itself. So at the beginning, every conversation, every growth plan was driven by a roadmap, a transformation roadmap that was set up from the beginning. We knew exactly which end-to-end processes were going to be delivered, when they were going to be transitioned, and how the model was going to be scaling through time, right? But there was a point when the conversations started including more, right? So we were not talking about when the process is going to be migrated, but um, is Colombia or Poland able to receive new capabilities for this process? And that started asking plenty of the questions. Can we find the right talent in Colombia to support this additional process? So these questions started becoming every time um, more often.
Mhm.
And that's when we realized that we were crossing a threshold. We were becoming something else. We were not only growing because there was a roadmap that had a plan that had defined from the beginning which processes we wanted to bring, but we were really growing because there was additional investment in our GBS sites because of the capabilities that we were able to grow. So then we started looking into processes that were not in the initial scope. We started having conversations around engineering, medical affairs, medical services, in manufacturing, CAD design. I mean, all these business processes that are very, very relevant, very critical, close to the business, uh, very specialized themselves. And having the opportunity to provide this globally from our center in Colombia, that opened up a complete different conversation. So to me, that was kind of the clearest signal that the GBS was really evolving, into a transformation program based on the trust that we were able to deliver from the original functions.
Right. No, I think that's fascinating because I can clearly see that evolution which you talked about, because it's not a lift and shift, it's more of a journey that you'll have taken through together, and that's really brilliant in terms of how the organization has evolved. Coming to the next question, really about, the entire business is about trust, and you talk a lot about performance through trust, and that's a phrase that you use publicly. So can you walk me through or walk us through what a situation was where the trust-based leadership was tested, not when really it worked? So can you just articulate some parts of that?
Well, this is very common when you look at finance functions, right? Because they are risky, they're business critical, they're sensitive. So normally you will find a lot of resistance at the beginning because of the distrust of the process. So I mean, I'm going to bring just one example that we faced. This was indirect taxes, very critical activity that had, of course, all the local expertise. And the local teams were the experts. They knew the regulations. They had been managing this for many, many years. So, of course, it was completely understandable that they were going to question how a new GBS in a different location could have the same level of expertise, the quality, the controls that are needed, right? So that
Mhm.
was completely understandable. So what the approach here is, instead of trying to convince them that, like with the deck, right, that
Yeah,
the model will work out,
yeah,
we just needed to focus in building trust through partnerships with the local team. So we
right,
needed to definitely involve those local experts throughout the whole transition, listen carefully to whatever concerns they may had, incorporate all of the recommendations, document everything very clearly, and establish a clear governance and performance metrics that would allow us to measure how we were achieving the expected results from moment zero, right?
right,
So to be able to achieve these, I mean, we need to have very clear SLAs, reporting, the awareness of all the critical deadlines, and be open to work together with them on a permanent basis until we are confident enough to run it by ourselves, right? And we need to have that openness and that will of sharing a process for the time that is necessary until we are able to really let go, right?
yeah,
And while we build that credibility. So once performance starts becoming consistent and we are really bringing into the business process improvements, business savings, cash flow impacts, then the business sees us as a trusted partner, and they are able to in a more confident way say, okay, you are able to manage this process, you are able to give us value if and increase the value that we're having today through this transition, and we are confident to let go. So this is something that happens a long time. It's not a one-time thing.
right,
It's not a go live date.
right.
It's something that needs to be built along the time.
Fantastic. No, I think the key word I took away was credibility, because when you have credibility, that's when they trust you, and that's when things become easier to, engage with the stakeholders. So that brings us to the third question, and also the last question of this particular segment. So you talked about co-designing, transitions with local teams, and of course there is a lot of cultural nuances and, apprehensions about jobs going and all that. So what does it look like in practice in a room on the day of a difficult conversation with a country stakeholder who really doesn't want to give up, you know, the process. He doesn't want to let go of control, So how does that really look?
Well, that's a very normal and usual situation. Well, I'm gonna keep talking about taxes because this is a sensitive one. And well, I think the key here with with these local stakeholders is to make sure that they keep being your partners even beyond the go live, right? It's not just about handing responsibility and this is your problem now, but it's making sure that we build together this long-term success. And I think that makes a completely different um, situation to be able to face the challenges that come after one of these transitions. So again, I'm going to go to taxes. This is a specific process in Brazil,
Mhm.
very manual,
Mhm.
right? It's a standardizable process, so
Mhm.
that's already a challenge for a GBS to handle. And these taxes needed to be paid every single day to support the sales process. So
Right.
this is as critical as it was. There was a high risk for the business in case of any failure or missed deadline or a mistake or input that was wrongly placed for the process. So, of course, you can imagine how reluctant the
Right.
local team and the local controller was for this. I mean, it's like
Right.
there is no way on letting this go because business risk is very high.
Mm.
Um, and again, from day one, the conversation was not about convincing them that we could do any better. Of course, they could do it better than anyone else, right? They're local, they have the time zone, they have the expertise. So it was like, how can we better support you so that you trust us and we can share the knowledge that is needed so that we can take over these. So I needed to understand the real concerns, and that was the kind of conversation that needed to take place,
Right.
right? This was not about the process. This was about the risks and the
Mm.
controls that needed to be taken
Right.
in this case. And of course, this required spending valuable time with them, not coming to propose solutions from day one, but listening, walking the process with them, traveling to the country, identifying the possible risks that we could face and how to face those day-to-day situations that were going to be that we were possibly going to be facing.
Right.
And that's what co-design for
Mm.
me. That's what it means, right?
Right.
It's dedicating the valuable time with the local experts, making sure that we have the right knowledge transfer, but not about the A to Z process. It's
Right.
about the daily situations that can be faced and that arise and that we really need to struggle and resolve, right? We need to do joint testing. We need to include additional controls, learn how to make decisions when needed,
Right.
right? And accepting that this is a process that we're going to be co-leading for some time,
Right.
right? And that's when the results may be the expected ones, right?
Right.
So yeah, and learn how to resolve the different situations, and when things don't go as planned, there will always be something that doesn't go as planned, always,
Mm.
right? So I think we need to be prepared not to not to promise that everything will be fine,
Right.
but to know how to communicate and how to work together solutions so that we can make sure that the business impact is as minimum as possible whenever situations arise, and just be transparent, be clear, and be sure that we can work together to have strong processes.
Fantastic. No, I think that's what I took away also was the navigating the uncertainty and making sure that the stakeholders comfortable and doing this jointly so that it doesn't feel like a one-way street of engagement. So this is fantastic. So thank you so much, Paula. I think this wraps up the first segment, and I would love to talk to you about change, local culture, and learning in the next part. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights and views.
All right, Anisu, it was my pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me.